Lately, Earl hadn't been himself. He'd been quietly seething over the recent theft of his young chickens. What baffled him most was how the coop sat just behind the wall from his bedroom, and the room of his invalid younger brother, Billy. Yet the birds had vanished without a sound. Not a single squawk. Not even a bark from Lucky, the old hound who usually growled at the wind. The more Earl thought about it, the more he burned inside. Maybe his house was built on some cursed land. He hadn't eaten chicken on New Year's in years. Since their parents passed away, leaving behind the half-alive burden that was Billy, Earl hadn't so much as tasted a scrap of meat. If the foxes didn't get the birds, sneaky hands did, always slipping in when Earl was out working the fields. Once, a fox dragged blood-soaked feathers all the way into the house, right up to the leg of the bed shared by the two brothers. Another time, the whole flock disappeared in broad daylight. Billy was no help. The boy was a useless wreck, spent all day wide-eyed, grinning with that crooked mouth, never speaking a word. If he could talk, maybe just maybe the damn foxes would fear a human voice. If he could walk, maybe he'd hear a thief's step. But no, Billy didn't walk. He didn't do anything but stare and smile. What kind of joke had God played, making a person with limbs they couldn't use? Some doctor, friend of the old county magistrate, once said Billy had some kind of brain decay. Degeneration. Paralysis. Words Earl never understood. He was born a farmhand, as were his folks before him. He knew crops and livestock, not the fancy talk of white-coat doctors. After stewing on it long enough, Earl grabbed his machete and went out to split some bamboo. On Mr. Carter's land, bamboo grew in spades. But tenant farmers like Earl were only allowed the soft cores. The outer husks were for the landlord to weave baskets, storage bins, and fish traps. Rich folks used bamboo for everything. Poor folks like Earl just patched up their walls with whatever strips they could get. His home was nothing but woven bamboo panels. The strong spots had one layer, the weak spots got two, maybe three. Earl's hands, though rough, were deft. He sliced long stalks into slim ribbons, split them finer with the tip of his blade, then bent them just so, enough to weave into a screen. By sundown, he had a makeshift door, a rectangular frame, one post longer than the other so he could jam it into a bamboo socket in the ground. The top was tied with dried palm twine, making a swing door that didn't need hinges. No wasted money at the hardware store. He remembered why he needed the door in the first place. Last week, Lucky had sneaked in through the back and eaten half a pound of pork. A gift from a neighbor, too, someone who knew Earl had had nothing but bad luck with chickens and gave him a little meat out of pity. But the damn dog, usually so well behaved, ate it right off the counter. Lucky had never done anything like that before. It was strange. Since Billy had grown older, their place had become deserted. Kids in the area stopped coming by. No one wanted to see a boy who looked so wrong. Pale, with a twisted smile that never left his face. His eyes were wide, whites always showing more than the pupils, which darted around like trapped insects. His mouth, God, that mouth, hung lopsided, and when he laughed, his tongue would roll out like some grotesque ribbon, long, red, and wet. Children whispered, "Billy's tongue ain't right, it's not even human." People said it in hushed tones, out of earshot of Earl. But rumors have wings. He heard it all. And truth be told, he couldn't blame them. He loved Billy like blood, but sometimes, even he was afraid of the boy. People are born with a fate, Earl often muttered, mostly to himself. Billy's fate was to be broken, and Earl's was to carry him. Meat was scarce. Mostly, Earl lived off the fish he caught in nearby ditches and streams. He was good with a rod and line. But Billy was a picky eater. Strange, for a cripple born into poverty. He barely touched rice. Barely sniffed salted fish. One day, Earl left him some half-cooked catfish, not realizing the pot hadn't simmered long enough. When he got back, Billy had licked the whole plate clean. And the way he looked at Earl, like he'd tasted something divine. Billy was growing fast, despite barely eating. He couldn't walk, but his body gave off a weird stink, like wet feathers. Like poultry. Yet there hadn't been a living chicken on the property in months. The neighbors were missing birds, too. But who could say if it was foxes or something worse? Whispers grew louder, that house is cursed. Haunted. Something in that garden eats live meat. Earl didn't care. He was up before dawn, out until dusk. Mornings he cooked 2 portions of rice, one for himself, one for Billy. Nights were for tea and maybe a sip of rice wine before collapsing into sleep. But sleep had turned restless. Something rustled in the dark. Every night, he heard it, the clatter of pots, the scraping of lids. One morning, a catfish left to dry was gone. Not a bone left. Rats? Maybe. But what rats only eat raw fish and ignore the dried stuff? He started staying up late, hoping to catch them. But the night he stayed awake, the house stayed silent. The moment he nodded off, the noise came again. One night, by moonlight through a crack in the wall, he thought he saw something. A red ribbon. Floating in the air like smoke. Faint, dancing in and out of the shadows. When he blinked, it vanished. He told himself he was dreaming. Then came the night of the funeral feast at the neighbors. Earl got drunk. Too drunk. Stumbled home and crashed onto the wide bed he shared with Billy. In the middle of the night, something brushed his cheek. Soft and wet, like silk soaked in dew. He thought Lucky was licking his face. But when he cracked an eye, he saw it, the same red ribbon from his dreams, curling and waving just inches from his nose. It floated like it had a mind of its own. He reached for it, but his hand wouldn't move. Drunk limbs obey no master. A sound. The ribbon vanished, like someone had pulled it into the darkness, from Billy's side of the bed. Billy was awake. Staring at him. His eyes glowed, not green, not blue, but a twisted mix of both, flickering like coals. Billy! What the hell are you doing? Earl's shout shook the room. Billy flinched. His glowing eyes dimmed. His mouth drooped again, slack and stupid. But for a moment, just one, there had been a look of disappointment, like a child robbed of its favorite toy. Something ain't right, Earl thought. Something's living in that boy, and it's not from this world. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, after planting rice seedlings, Earl walked straight to his cousin's house a few farms over. They were close, raised like brothers. Sam, Earl said, voice heavy. I don't know what's happening anymore. Billy's changing. Every day, he's less like a person. I don't think I can handle this much longer. Old Tom looked at his younger brother with a blend of pity and quiet dread. He had heard many things about the boy, more than his brother knew, but didn't know how to begin. I know he's been a burden on you, Earl, but what can we do? He's still blood, still kin. With that, he fell silent. Uncle Earl then told his brother about the strange happenings around the house. Tom listened for a while, then offered his brother a grave piece of advice. If you want the truth, you've got to know it from the root. I've heard some downright terrifying things about little Eli, but I'm still torn between belief and doubt. I've wanted to tell you, but didn't want to hurt your feelings. You're always out in the field, so how can you know what goes on at home? If you really want to know what that boy's up to, you'll have to spy on him, watch him close. After that, the old man went inside and came back with a chicken, its legs tied. You look pale, brother. Take this bird and cook it up with some mung beans. That's all I can do for you right now. Uncle Earl was halfway home when the rain came. Heavy, pounding rain, lightning clawing the sky. The road turned to slick mud underfoot. When he reached the house, he hurriedly tossed the chicken into the coop and rushed back out to the fields. If I wait any longer, the seedlings will be washed away, he thought, picking up speed. But just as he neared the edge of the rice field, he suddenly stopped, not because he was tired, but because he remembered what Tom had said. You need to spy. See what the boy does when you're gone. Through the downpour and the flicker of lightning, the back door came into view. But the dog, Lou, didn't come bounding out like usual. Probably off chasing that neighbor dog again. Earl edged closer to the coop door, just 10 steps away, when he heard a chicken scream out in panic. Damn coyotes again, he muttered, grabbing a stick and pushing open the door. The hinges groaned. And there it was, that cursed red ribbon from the other night. But longer now, almost glowing blood red in the flash of lightning. At the sound of the door, the ribbon whipped toward the front of the house with inhuman speed, gone in a blink. Inside the coop, all that remained was a clump of bloody feathers. Earl rushed to the bed. Little Eli lay there, seemingly asleep, but there was blood on the corner of his mouth. It wasn't the coyotes. That ribbon, that thing, killed the chicken. But what was it? And why was there blood on the boy's mouth? From that night on, Earl began noticing more strange things around the house. In the rice paddies, it was normal for folks to get leeches. Most healed up in a day or two. But not Earl, his bites festered, oozing yellow pus, sometimes lasting a month. Nothing helped, until he resorted to wrapping herbs and old remedies around his leg. Could it be that cursed ribbon? He'd wonder, before quickly brushing the thought aside, too absurd. And yet, he needed to know the truth. It was dry season. The rice harvest was over, and the villagers now turned to catching rats and trapping birds in the fields. Earl caught plenty, roasting them up with spices until the smell filled the whole house. But little Eli wouldn't touch them. He was wasting away. Looking at the boy made Earl's heart ache. Blood may be cursed, but it's still blood. One afternoon, a neighbor brought over fresh pork, just slaughtered. Earl tossed the meat onto a bamboo rack hanging over the kitchen fire, then hurried out to set up some night fishing traps. He had gone no more than 4 rows out into the field when something tugged at him, a vision of the red ribbon. He turned back. The door hinges no longer creaked, not since he'd packed them with soft mud. Now, as he entered silently, the kitchen stood still under the dim dusk. And there it was. The red ribbon. Floating, twisting through the air like it was dancing, gleeful, unaware of being watched. Earl crept forward. Carefully. Quietly. Step by step. The night sky, full of stars, spilled light through holes in the old roof. It fell on the ribbon, coiling and writhing like something alive. He squinted. His breath caught. It wasn't a ribbon. It was a tongue. A giant, glistening tongue, covered in tiny twitching papillae. They rippled as it licked the meat on the rack. The tongue slipped back toward the front of the house, then returned. Again and again, it moved back and forth, making little wet chep-chep sounds, like a child greedily eating. Earl's head swirled. A human tongue? No way. Human tongues aren't this long. Judging by just the kitchen alone, it had to be at least 10 feet long, maybe more, depending on where it came from. And still, it licked. The meat on the rack visibly shrinking with each pass. He remembered the rumors. He was suddenly paralyzed, his own tongue stiff in his mouth, while the monstrous tongue danced through the air. His hand trembled, searching through the dark for anything, to hold. Something solid, something brave. But the kitchen was empty. His hand landed on a patch of warmth. It was the ashes from the fire where he'd roasted birds earlier. Warm, but useless. He couldn't run, not with little Eli still in the house. So he lunged. Earl grabbed the thing with both hands, his fingers sinking into the slimy, writhing surface. The tongue thrashed with terrifying strength. It was slick, hard to hold. It flung him backwards into the hearth. But he refused to let go. Not now. In desperation, he grabbed a fistful of warm ashes and squeezed the tongue tighter, holding fast. From the front room, Eli made choking sounds, gasping and writhing. Lou, the dog, howled, a sound sharp and strange, like something dying slowly. Earl didn't care. He had it now, he was holding the devil's tongue with hands full of ash. But it was strong, inhumanly strong. It dragged him toward the front room. Little Eli groaned, kicking wildly on the bed. The moonlight from the broken shutters lit up his face, and Earl screamed. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was something else. Something monstrous. That grotesque tongue, now fully extended, wrapped around Earl's neck. The tip, coated in thick, foul mucus, groped across his face, searching, tasting. Earl panicked. His fingers found the machete by the bed. He raised it high. And brought it down. The clang of gongs and temple drums pierced the still night. Villagers along the creek behind Earl's house shouted, panicked. Flames roared through the dry season air, swallowing the house whole. By the time anyone arrived, it was gone, nothing left but glowing embers and smoke. Young men used palm fronds to douse the last of the flames, searching for bodies, but all they found was a broken machete and the shattered remains of a clay bowl. No one knew what happened to Uncle Earl or little Eli. And no one ever would. Except one man. Only one person never spoke a word about it. Old Tom. He didn't speak because he didn't know. He didn't speak because he knew too much. And if one day he hadn't whispered it to me, we wouldn't have this terrifying story to tell.